Check, check, 1, 2.
Okay, so my mic was on. Can y'all hear me okay? Thumbs up, y'all can? Okay, cool. Well, I was given a whole introduction, but my mic wasn't on. So I just want to welcome everyone to the, my sound is terrible, to the, Sam, can you do the introduction, please?
Absolutely. Can you hear me okay? Perfect. So welcome everyone to the very first Black People Parenting Leadership, Liberty, Leadership and Legacy Juneteenth Summit presented by M&F Bank. Black People Parenting began as a Facebook group in 2020 and is currently an outlet for over 6,000 members to share experiences, seek advice in a non-judgmental environment. In 2021, Black People Parenting nonprofit organization was founded with the purpose of uplifting and educating, as well as empowering Black parents. We chose Juneteenth holiday weekend to not only commemorate the significance of the freedoms allotted when slavery was abolished, but to also highlight the deficits that continue to face our community, as well as provide tools to move forward. Today, we divided this program into 3 defining panels. Liberty. How did we get here? How do we keep these liberties? Leadership. Who's got next? Who's propelling us forward? Who's cultivating tomorrow's leaders? And finally, legacy. What are you leaving behind for the future? How do you get it? And how do we keep it? So let's get into it. First up is our Liberty panel. Hello, so we have Ms. Talulepe and we have Mr. Bernard here. And if you could both just give us a quick but thorough background of what you do and how you kind of fell into, because we all kind of fall into our careers, right? So how you fell into it. So Talulepe, if you could start with that.
I will, thank you. Good morning. Okay, so my name's Talulupe Omokaye. I like to call it my former life. So in my former life, I was a marketing and channel manager for Newell Rubbermaid right out of college. I graduated from the North Carolina Central University. Um, and I was a manager over channels and markets of tools, but then we was promoted and was a channel manager over Goody hair products, so like combs, brushes, things like that. The economy fell apart in about 2009, 2010. I was laid off, like many people at that time, and moved back to North Carolina and started to go to Meredith to get my MBA. But while I was at Meredith, Evolve fell into my spirit. Evolve is a nonprofit that I founded in 2011. And the question of, were we prepared for life when we graduated? Not just prepared to be trained to do a job, but were we prepared to be well-rounded adults and have life skills and be mentored and things of that nature? And a lot of the benefits that I feel like I got, growing up once I got here to North Carolina. Um, so we started with college students, and our focus was developing life skills because I feel like college students were a forgotten population, and we evolved, no pun intended, over time to suit a age group. And then we kind of evolved again, we suited the age group because whether you're aging out of the foster care system or working to get your GED, having life skills may be a bit more of an immediate need for you than somebody who has possibly the bubble of a college. Then we shifted again because there's thousands of nonprofits here just in the Triangle, Raleigh, Durham, Chapel Hill area alone. So we wanted to become a vendor to those nonprofits instead of trying to reinvent the wheel. How can we support some of the great work already going on out there? How can we use our stellar programming to reach a broader audience of youth and young adults while also helping build capacity of other organizations? I'm sorry, that's my mascot, my cat, Stokely. um, and then now we lead the My Brother and Sisters Keeper initiative here in Wake County, which is President Barack Obama's initiative to close the achievement gap for boys and young ladies of color. Under that banner, we are a community collaborator. We bring a lot of organizations together. We're working to bring the different core competencies of those many organizations that function in the Triangle, a lot of which doing a lot of replicated work into the space to be able to have a broader community. So that's kind of our focus now. And that's how I fell into it, for love of my community and wanting to make it better.
That's absolutely amazing. That's a very quick, but again, very thorough synopsis of what you do. I'm sure it's a lot more that it entails, but thank you for that. Mr. Gaddis.
Well, I started out. I felt into my position after getting out of college. I went to Benedict College, which is one of the greatest colleges in the universe, HBCU all the way live. And I took my first job working with the Popular Correction back in 1986, working into the recreation department. And this is where they just started building all the brand new prisons in South Carolina back in 1986. And they were placing gyms in all the new prisons here in South Carolina. So I was the coordinator of one of the prisons called Legal Correctional Institution. And one of the things they did, they put the gyms in the prison system and they call them all gyms. And so what happened when guys come into the prison system, all they do is play basketball and sell drugs and gamble and do all the kind of things in the gym that they normally do out in their community. So what I did is change the name of my gym to the multi-purpose building. I had to go ahead and change something, and that was the name of I changed that name of the multi-purpose building and start certifying a lot of inmates in how to play games, structurally, community. And I found out, and I was telling the warden, this is back in 1987, where that I got all the coaches and all the officials certified. Some of the guys got out of prison and they became professional high school, college basketball, softball, baseball officials coming out of prison, which made a very good income during that time in that era. And so that was my journey working with inmates on that part. I had one of the top power lifters in the state. Actually, this 140-pound still holds the South Carolina U.S. record in powerlifting, and so we kind of brought some organization to that era. And I was just a very, very young man then. And then I moved from that era and went into counseling. You know, I went into AOD counseling with inmates. And after understanding that they didn't have an outlet, as far as men like us, we don't have an outlet. We hold everything on our back, even in prison. And so I got very excited at the counseling part of that and helping them in transition through a therapeutic community. Then I left that era and started looking at the juveniles, you know, and I said, if I can help the kids, if I can keep guys out of jail and help kids keep them from going to jail, then I serve a purpose. And we started a therapeutic community in the Department of Juvenile Justice. We had 38 of the roughest kids out of the South Carolina that we helped for 4 years. So we started feeding them something they was eating, and the system didn't like it. So they got rid of the program after 4 years of running a program with only about 6 altercations in that unit. They couldn't believe it, and it still was able to find a way to defund the program. And then I started to, you know, I left there and went to the Department of Mental Health. Now, this is crazy because all the kids with the same kind of criminal record, right, who went to jail, the white kids went to treatment and the black kids went to jail. And then when I found out, it was one thing different: access to counsel. One kid had access to legal counsel, and the other kid didn't. So what happened? The one kid went to treatment, the other kid went to juvenile justice. And so when I got sick of that, then I went into building my own personal fortune. So the last 20 years, I was a little bit self-centered in building my own personal fortune, working in the network marketing arena. Now our goal was to help 10 mothers in the last 10 years earn a 6-figure income from home, where now they can have the money and afford access to legal access to help their kids get out of trouble. So that's where I'm at right now today. Now I'm working in transitional federal prisoners out of the community, out of the prison system, and back into the community.
Cool. Thank you for both of those introductions, Lulupe and Mr. Gaddis. So I know y'all probably couldn't hear me when my mic was muted. I was having some technical difficulties, but we are back on track now. And I want to, just out of respect for everyone's time, just go ahead and hop into these questions that we have. So this is the Liberty panel, and I have you two up here to discuss liberty, because you all represent two sides of the spectrum that I think are very important as we focus on how to navigate through this new world that we're in. Lulupe, with your mentorship organization, Mr. Gaddis, with what you're doing with prisoners and helping to reduce recidivism. The first question that I want to ask you both is, what does liberty mean to you? So Lulupe, what do you think? How would you define liberty?
To me, liberty is freedom. It's the freedom to live the way you want. It's the freedom to have the equity and the space that you have, to have ownership, to be able to have autonomy over your body. To me, liberty is the ability to be able to be educated and have the ability to be self-educated and truly educated, not in a can or without context. So I believe that's liberty to me, the ability to live with freedom, and maybe in largely freedoms that those that came before us didn't have.
Good. Mr. Gaddis, what do you think? What's liberty?
I like that, but you know, liberty is meaning that I have an opportunity to grow the talents that God gave me. You know, all of us, I have a very unique set of skills, and I think give me the opportunity to grow those skills without any interruptions. I mean, that's what liberty feels to me. And also, liberty to me feel that I can tell the truth and not feel threatened. I can challenge a lie, and I can tell the truth. You know, I also like to have the liberty to be able to fail. You know, to me, I learn more by failing than I do by winning, and I should have the ability to do that and come back and get better. You know, so I think that word liberty is such a broad, such a very wide open statement. But I would just like to have the liberty to become better. You know, to have the ability to mess up. You know, and get corrected. You know, and challenge a lie. You know, I don't care how much it costs me. You know, I would just like to have the ability to do that. I also like liberty to be able to access money from the banks, to be able to grow my own business, you know, without being judged, but based on my ability to get the job done. So that's my theory of liberty.
Sure. So let me ask this: in the areas that you both work in, how do you see us as Black folks, as the Black community? How can we collectively achieve that sense of liberty that you both reference? How do we get to that point of achieving liberty for all of us, or freedom, like Tolulope said? Liberty, in a sense, is freedom. But how do we achieve that?
Well, I think freedom is a mindset. It's a mindset. First, we have to be free of ourselves. We have to be free in our own mindset. You know, we got to be free in our beliefs, because I believe we all have a roadmap, and that roadmap is first belief, attitude, actions, results, and lifestyle. And we can never get it out of order. But the problem is that we don't want to work on our beliefs and our philosophy. It's so distorted. We believe in one thing today and something tomorrow, you know. And so, so these are some of the things that I know I deal with constantly, every day with myself, my grandson, my community. You know, challenge these things and make sure that we can keep this in front. I had a kid walk, one of my little neighborhood kids, just yesterday. He was walking past my house, and I noticed him had a bulging coming out of his shirt, and it appeared to be a gun. So I came, knock on my window. My wife, why are you knocking on the window like that? I'm trying to stop this little kid. So he stopped. I said, come here. And I pulled the shirt up, and he had a toy Nerf gun stuffed in his pants. And I pulled it out. It was a pretty. I said, look, you have the right to play with a Nerf gun. However, you can't conceal it. Don't you know you can die by the time you get to your house by just concealing that weapon? And it was a toy gun. You know, so again, we have to be very vigilant of what's going on in our community. We can't leave the community because we got to educate it and make some money. We got to be very vigilant in being able to have what we call, they're training us on fear. Everything about fear. And everybody knows that fear is not real. It's false evidence appears real. So none of it is real. Danger is real. Fear is not. And we have to be enough, we got to have enough in ourselves to confront that. Whether it's a kid, pants knocked down, or whether it's a man slapping his woman around. We got to be able to confront these things truthfully and with love.
Yeah, and Mr. Gaddis, you referenced that story, of course, to me brings back memories of Tamir Rice, right? Mm-hmm. And one of the things as Black people parenting that, you know, I'm adamant about is the fact that we have to raise our children differently than other races of people raise their children, right? That's a conversation that, you know, a white neighbor would not have to have with someone in their neighborhood, that's a young man in their neighborhood who was white, right? So that, I think that freedom of being able to be, the freedom of just being able to exist and to be a child, right? A lot of times that doesn't exist for us. So Tolulope, I want you to answer that same question, but just put it in a perspective of the young people that you deal with in terms of mentoring, the young people that you come across. Like how are we teaching them what freedom is and all of those things that they're going to need? Because again, we have to parent and mentor them differently.
So I want to answer from both perspectives, like from this perspective of the youth that we serve and a lot of the different work that's being done out there to address and support youth and young adults, but also from the perspective of community and collaboration. So as the youth piece is concerned, I believe that we teach our young people liberty by exhibiting it ourselves. As the brother just said, and as Nina Simone even said, that freedom is no fear, right? The ability to live fearlessly. And I believe that that's our right. That's a capability that we all have, even though there's things going on out there that are dangerous, as he was saying. So teaching young people by exhibiting that, exhibiting fearlessness, exhibiting the ability, teaching them their rights, teaching them their brilliance, teaching them, dismantling a lot of the colonizing thoughts that they've been taught about their abilities and who they are, and teaching them their history. I believe that is extremely important. Young people understanding, our young people, young Black children understanding our history, not just starting with slavery, but also understanding our history in the context of how we're all created throughout the diaspora. I think also teaching young people to be able to be advocates for themselves, which is something that we do, which is something that other organizations out there do. Making sure that young people know their rights, making sure young people know how policies are made, making sure young people know how they affect them, how those policies affect them as a young person in their community, and making sure they know what they need to do to change those policies. One of the things that we're doing actually next weekend at ECU is we're partnered with the North Carolina Native American Youth Council, and we are hosting a youth summit. Youth caucus there that we did at NC State a couple months ago. And that's an opportunity to really get young people registered to vote, for one. Secondly, make sure that we're creating educated voters and not just telling people to register and go vote for a party, but also making sure that young people are knowledgeable. I think that the way to liberty and freedom and the way to teach that in our community is to build knowledge in our community and make sure that people have access in our community. Even if that's just knowledge about how to grow your own garden, if that's knowledge about the background of some of the different candidates that's on the ballots coming up and how those roles, like city council, like county commissioners, like the sheriff's department, how those different things actually impact us as individual community owners, community members, making sure that we understand the things that are important to us and how they actually reflect inside the system. If we're talking about voting and making sure that we're getting people reelected and talking about liberty from that standpoint. I think it's also important for young people, as we talk about liberty, to understand that we are the employers of these people that we're putting in office. And if we're talking about building equity, it has to kind of start there in some spaces. The other way that we have to do it is on the outside, is community. So, I want to go back to the youth mentoring piece and just name a couple organizations that I think are doing amazing work. So you have Accelerating Men that's out there doing great work in Raleigh. You have Taylor Mentoring Leadership Association or group that's out there doing great work in Durham. You have Fannie Lou Hamer Institute. You have SOAR Outreach. You have Young Men for Christ. You have the Gifted Arts. You have Education Justice Alliance and Southern Coalition for Social Justice and Step Up Ministries and Interfaith Food Shuttle and Haven House and The Well and a lot of different organizations. A part of the thing that people don't know is who's out there and what are they doing. And that's one of the things that I want to make sure that we're getting awareness of for parents who want to know where to put their children if they're talking about they want their children to have a mentoring program or a youth development program or some sort of leadership development. There are great organizations out there doing that work, and people can visit our website to also see in our directory some other organizations if they're looking for other mentoring programs for their students. From the community aspect, I think we have to do better at coming together if we can have a real conversation around that. There's a lot of divisiveness outside of our community that causes divisiveness inside of our community. It causes petty squabbling. It causes us to argue over semantics. You don't see that in other communities. You don't see in other communities where somebody's pulling something together for everybody to work together. And then there's those people that just want to be like, well, no, because of who's doing it. Because I'm not in the leadership space to do that thing, right? We have to be better in our community at things like that. We have to be better at supporting one another. We have to be better at allowing some of our community. We have to be better at understanding that we all have a part to play, and it's important to stick to our parts, right? And I consider it like a symphony. So if we're putting this music together, somebody has to be on the sax, somebody has to be on the drums, somebody has to be on the flute, somebody got to be the one that cleans up after us, somebody got to be the one to book the shows, you know what I'm saying? Somebody has to be the maestro at the front of the stage. And we're all actually gifted for those roles through the divine and through our training. We're all gifted through those for those specific parts that we're supposed to play. The downside comes in when we get together to make this music and somebody likes the way the drum sounds better than their sax, or they're getting attention for the cymbals, but I'm over here on the flute. You know what I'm saying? Then we're trying to switch up, but really you're trained to do this other thing. So I think part of what we need to do as a community is, I don't want to simplify it by saying form like Voltron, but truthfully, right? The trucks that were supposed to be the arms became the arms. They didn't try to be the chest. You know what I'm saying? Like, but they all were a part of the same structure. And I think it's important for us as a community to get away from internal squabbling, to get away from any of the divisive measures that's been trained into us and encouraged through systemic measures, you know what I'm saying, and through society. Sometimes we have to break out of our habits to say, I'm going to step aside and actually help this person. I'm going to reach back and help that person, regardless if I'm the person that people are seeing doing it. There's work to be done. So I think in community, something that we can do is A, do better at coming together, and B, seek to come together and seek to understand each other, and seek to build those relationships that we often covet from people outside of our community.
But
okay. So let me kind of go ahead, Mr. Gaddis. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying what she was saying that made so much sense. But right now, it's so hard for us to get to those points because we are right now in a crisis, and I cry every night because we are in a serious crisis. We lose 30 Black boys every day to a bullet. Every day, 7 days a week, 30. On a national average, 30 Black boys die to a bullet. You do the math on that. How many deaths is going to have to happen in our community before we can get to the other stuff? We are in a serious crisis that all the other shiny stuff kind of keep us away from it. My pastor wife just got killed 2 days ago. A young Black guy killed her. And the guy who she was helping buy groceries, the older guy she was helping, this young guy broke in his house as they were unloading the stuff, the groceries. This young man shot her and killed her and the older guy she was helping. This is the first lady. Who kills the first lady? Church? Who shoots and kills the first lady? So what I'm saying is that we can have programs, we can do a lot of things, but we are right now in a serious crisis in our neighborhoods.
I agree with you.
And until what I'm saying is that this is my number one crisis right now. I've stopped everything. My number one crisis right now. This is the number one crisis for me now, not for everybody, but for me. Everything around this massive killing of Black men killing Black men, cops killing Black men, right? So I stopped everything to focus on this because this is like a trend. Like that young boy was walking around with a toy gun in his pocket and with his shirt over it like a concealed weapon. It's a cancer. And if we don't bring out the root of this cancer, it doesn't matter what you do with the programs that we develop and all the organizations that we have, they're all going to die because this one cancer is growing so rapidly in the last 15 to 20 years, And so I was talking to somebody to say a young man I seen a guy who got out of prison, right, and really informed himself. But guess what? Prisons is a part of our community. Mm-hmm. Black community, prisons is a part of our community makeup. Well, guess what? We got to find a way to make that something we can benefit from and use because these guys, I did an intake of 30 inmates last month. I did 30 intakes. Guess how many of them had a high school diploma? 3. 27 out of 30. Guess what grades they dropped out of? 9th. All of them dropped out of high school in 9th grade. 27 out of 30 Black men graduated high school. So if I fell out of high school in the 9th grade, what's my likelihood of going to prison?
It's very high.
Right. You know that.
Right, but that's the point that I'm making, right?
But we got to get in the system. We got to get in the system of the prison, because prison is where we have to transform our black men. Right now, I got a guy who's been in prison for 17 years, and guess what? He got in prison at 21. He's getting out after serving 17 years, and he is more stupider. My grandma says stupider than he were when he first went in prison. That's ridiculous. To put a man away for 17 years and made him more dangerous and more crazier than he was before he went in at 21. Well, we got to find a way to get intertwined in the system.
So let me ask this. I have
to address that really quickly. To my point, that actually proves my point. Right. I think that we have a and both problem in our community. We are survivalists. We are people who don't think long term. We tend to be, and the system is set up for us to be that way. Right. So we can't be like, I agree that the problem is an emergency and we're in a state of emergency and needs to happen now. But at the same time, we have to walk and chew gum. We can't allow the state of emergency to put us in a place where our focus only becomes that. Because just like you said, these young men dropped out of high school in 9th grade. That means we got to get them before they get to prison. That means that we got to start addressing this. In reality, they start making sure in 3rd grade and then retest them in 7th grade to test their reading level to determine how many beds they need to build in prison. Right. So all of this does start early in education and with mentoring. So yes, we need to address what's going on the streets. That's important. It's important because there's a problem already in progress. You get what I'm saying? But we have to cut off the tap somewhere, or else it's going to be always us trying to catch this water and pull it out pour it out the boat. We have to be concerned with the fish that are getting sick and the lake that's getting the fish sick. We have to be willing to focus on, like you said, if this is what's happening and they're sending them to prison and they're not getting any more intelligent, then we got to change the policies that impact the people when they go to prison. We need to change the policies that are sending more and more young black men and boys to prison at such high rates than their counterparts. We have to change the policies that show that white people can commit a crime, but black people are more likely to be arrested by it. We have to change the policies that make police arrest more black people in the area when we are the minority in that area, like in Raleigh. You know what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, we have to address both of those issues. It can't just be, that's part of what I mean when I say we in the community can't be focused on this other stuff. Forget the shiny stuff. There'll be people who do what you do, work that you do that's important, that's imperative, that needs to happen, that'll look at other people and say, well, they're doing that, but what I'm really doing is really making an impact. But all of this is making an impact. Because if one organization is working in a silo, they're doing this. They need to connect to other organizations and start doing this and create a chain so that now we're not using as many of our resources, because we know there's an equity in funding and resources for people that look like us, for the organizations that we run, for the work that we do, for the people that look like the work that we're doing the work for, right? So then we have to come up with more creative ways. We are a village-minded people. Instead of trying to be individualized, we need to come together and say, okay, your mentoring program, you have boys in high school, they have been getting in trouble. How do I connect you to my program where I'm working with men in prison who want to get them on the right path so that I'm stopping these boys from even getting here? And then these men are being able to see the impact that they have in community and kind of change their own life. How are we creating mentoring programs in prison for people who are getting out to help reach back to people that are in there, or people who are in there as for long term, to help young people not end up where they are? How do we come up with more innovative and creative solutions to fix the problems that we have in our community while addressing the emergent and immediate needs that we're facing right now?
Well, you know, one of the things.
Hold on, Mr. Gaddis, because we're running out of time. So I want to get another question in before we end in the next few moments. So I want to ask, what can we do? What needs to be done to ensure that individuals leaving incarceration have everything that they need when they come home? And also, what can we do to be sure that they are safe while they're in prison?
Well, if you look at the prison industry, it's one of the most profitable industries in the United States. They make a lot of money off of inmates. South Carolina, this is where I live in South Carolina. We have about roughly 19,000 inmates. We got about 19,000, close to 20,000 inmates in South Carolina, with and we have 20 prisons. So that means we are housing about 1,000 inmates per prison. 66% of those guys are black males, right? And they got the money to put in programs, but they don't use them. I've worked in the industry for 15 years, and I've seen some guys who was able to navigate through those systems and got great, benefits for those systems and came out great. I mean, educated, went back in the workforce. Some of them went back to school. So it's a system. It's set up there, but they know that these guys not going to navigate through. So we need a person within the prison, not a staff, prisoners who went through the system to get back in the system and help navigate these young boys through this prison system. So when they transition out of the system, they can be back productive in the community. And what the young lady was saying about the children, my wife and I, we always agree. Don't teach a child about sex after he start having it. It's too late. You lost them. I'm gonna train a kid. I'm gonna teach a child about a gun after he done shot at a couple of people. He is gone. I have lost that child. So we got to train our kids from ages 5, 6, very, very young. We got to grab our kids about guns. Right now, we have an organization where we are training kids this summer on gun safety. We're not running away from guns. We're running towards the fear. They say don't run away from the fear. You run towards the fear.
Are you all teaching kids how to shoot and everything?
We teaching them about safety, what a gun is, what it does, what a bullet, what happens when a bullet hits somebody. Our kids don't know. We have kids shooting at kids and they never shot a gun. They just shoot. They don't know. And it sounds good. It feels good. It gives them that power. So we are trying to train them about what a gun is at an early age. White kids do that all the time.
I advocate for teaching Black kids about guns. Yes. I think that the piece is teaching respect for them, and like teach them how to properly handle a gun. I believe that Black people have always had a necessity to own guns. I believe that that's our right. I don't believe there's anything wrong with that. I think we see a lot of white kids managing guns and shooting, and that's normalized. When we see a gun in a Black kid's hand, it's instantly criminalized. So I think that it's important for us to make sure that we're also teaching our young people how to protect themselves, their home, and their community. Because like you said, unfortunately, but I don't want to make light of the situation, but if the first lady or that gentleman she was helping possibly had a gun, when that person ran up on them, I'm not saying that I'm advocating for a gunfight in the street, but I think it's important for us to protect ourselves.
Yeah, but see, it's two issues here. There's nothing he could do about that. Somebody could be in my house when I walk home. My wife and both and I can get killed. Ain't nothing I can do about that because you can't have no reaction over that. Like Pastor First Lady Brown and that old guy she was helping, they just didn't have no clue. You know what I'm saying? So that's another issue going on with the young man who shot them. That's what's something going on with him. So ain't nothing you can do about that. But I'm saying with some of the things that's going on in our community, like we got our kids, our young kids who, and then we got our teenagers and we have our adults. So if you look at these 17, 18, 20-year-olds, they're killing each other massively. They're going to jail. That's no doubt. The system already know that. So what do they do when they get to jail? It's what counts. It's what they do when they get there. You know what I'm saying? So we got to start getting into policy. That's where it comes back to our legislation, setting policies. No, you're not getting out of prison without a high school diploma. You can stay here the rest of your life. That's a part of your parole condition. You have to. It's not up for debate. So some of these things can't be up for debate. You see what I'm saying? And so these are the things that we need to do. They need counseling, mental health counseling. They get no mental health counseling in prison? What the heck?
So if we could, let's put a pin and kind of button this up a little bit in terms of liberty, because we want to move on to the next panel. So I think number one, thank you both for being a part of this panel. This was a great discussion. Uh, and just briefly, if you could tell me, both of you, what do we need to do to move beyond just having a discussion and move into a phase of action and finding the freedom, right? Because that's what the Liberty Panel is about, is how can we find the freedoms that we um, as Black folks need to obtain. If you can give me one thing that we need to do in 5 words or less, because we run out of time, um, what's the strategy to find that freedom?
In 5 words or less. I think that's the problem right there. I'm joking. I think that we need to be, I think, first of all, we have to learn to love each other again and trust each other again as community. I think that's important. I think that we need to then support those doing the work, be it by volunteering or by giving our time, talent, or treasure to the work being done. Um, uh, no matter the size, organizations need volunteers. I think it's important for everyone, if you have a young person around you in your community or in your home or in your church that you reach, to be a personal mentor, to stop them from getting to the next step and get out of our own. A lot of people say, well, I have, a lot going on in my own house, or I'm not perfect or something like that. And those are the people that our young people need to see, not people who are pretending to be perfect. I ultimately, honestly believe that our community needs we need a true community-centered 501c4, and that's an organization that focuses on being able to lobby politicians, raise money for politicians, donate money to the candidates that they want to support, create our own ballots to go to the to go to the ballot box, temporary ballots and things like that. I believe that the power that Black folks need, the political power that we need, is not in necessarily an elected seat, but in a unified community.
All right, cool. That was way more than 5 words, but
Not bad.
thank you, Tallulah Pay. All right, Mr. Gaddis, let's give it a shot. 5 words or less.
Well, 5 words: health insurance, health insurance, life insurance, legal insurance. Take care of the neighbor to the left and take care of the neighbor to the right.
Okay. All right, cool. Well, thank you guys for both being here. It's been a pleasure having this conversation. Social media, Tallulah Pay, tell them how to follow you, tell them what your social media is, and Mr. Gaddis, if you have any social media that you would like to shout out, do that also.
Yes, you can follow us by looking up Evolve Mentoring. We lead, like I said, the My Brother's Keeper or his sisters of my MBSK Wake Initiative. You can find me on Instagram at Tallulah Pay. I am Tallulah Pay O, or with Evolve Mentoring at Evolve_MBSK Wake.
Thank
And
you,
our
ma'am.
website, evolvementoring.org.
Okay. And Tallulah Pay will be back for the next panel also. Mr. Gaddis.
Well, you can find me at 904 Oak Street, Columbia. Our phone number is 803-309-6342. Call me anytime. Stop by for a cup of coffee. So you can find me anytime.
Perfect. Thank you both. We appreciate it. All right, y'all. If you're tuning in, we'll be back for the next panel in 5 minutes. So stay tuned. Hey y'all, so welcome back to the inaugural Black People Parenting Juneteenth Summit. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you for being here. That last panel that we had was so great. It was so special. If you missed it, please go back and watch the replay. Also, if you're watching us on YouTube, feel free to like, share, leave comments, do all the things on YouTube, because we want to be sure that folks are being engaged in this panel, in this discussion. The next panel that we have coming up, we have some great speakers who are going to talk to us about leadership. And I think it's important, if we're talking about Juneteenth, in the spirit of Juneteenth, in the spirit of this wonderful weekend that we're celebrating, Father's Day weekend, Juneteenth weekend, my birthday weekend, I think it's important to talk about leadership. So I want to bring some folks up on the panel who are going to discuss the importance of leadership and tell us about some of the work that they're doing to increase leadership in our community and to improve the leadership, because none of this is going to change if we don't have effective leaders, starting with us, but also moving into the next generation. So how are we raising the next generation of leaders? So let's bring up first Tallulah. She is coming back. Hi, Tallulah. Thank you for joining us once again.
Hello.
Mr. Antoine Medley is here. Hi, Mr. Medley. How you doing, sir?
Hey, good afternoon, folks. How are y'all?
All right, good to see you. And last but definitely not least, Mr. Troy Johnson. Troy Johnson is here. What's up, Troy?
What's happening, fellas? Happy Juneteenth, ladies, as well. Hope everybody's good.
Yep. So happy Juneteenth to all. So let's just go around really quick, and why don't you all tell everybody on the summit, in the summit, what it is that you do. Tallulah, we'll start with you again. If you just give us another quick overview of what it is that you do for the people who missed it the first time.
My name is Tallulah Omokaye. I am the founder of Evolve Mentoring. We are a nonprofit organization that helps teach life skill development, youth development to youth and young adults of color. We lead the My Brother and Sisters Keeper initiative here in Wake County, which is an initiative started by President Barack Obama nationally to close the achievement gap for boys and young men of color, now including girls and young women. And under that, we work to be a community collaborator and bring different organizations together, either working in silos to addressing the larger issue as a community.
Dope. Mr. Medley, please tell us about yourself, sir.
Hey, good afternoon, all. My name is Antoine Medley. I'm I guess you could say strategist, father, philanthropist. I've started a number of nonprofits working with the young Black men and boys. I'm the new founder of a new podcast called the Forced Pivot Podcast. I also have a couple things in the works too around trying to find a way to help young people learn to think. Right. A lot of times we try to tell kids what to think. We don't need. After having experience with the miseducation of the Negro, I sort of found out that we can't tell our young people what to think. We've got to teach them how to think and the importance of that. So that's sort of my calling right now, is to try to find a way to help young people think, because you can't be a leader unless you can think, and that's what they need more than anything else, that I feel.
Dope.
Glad to be here.
Dope. Thank you for joining us, sir. Troy Johnson, tell us about your organization and what you do, sir.
Yes, Antoine, I second that, brother. Critical thinking is what this world is missing, brother. So, Troy Jermaine Johnson, founder, visionary of Y4C Enterprises. We have the pleasure of impacting our youth and inspiring our youth through character development and physical activity. Through love, consistency, opportunity, exposure, we impact the lives of the underserved. Focus on young men, ages 7 to 17, through a barrage of different exposure events, from golf, football, boxing, career development through video game design, where we're at today, and barbershop talks to continue to bridge the gap in our community, because everything starts with the conversation. So outside of that, vendor for Wake County Public School System, and have had the pleasure of inspiring through my passion of youth, through kindergarten all the way through postgraduate.
Dope. I believe Dr. Tiffany Wiggins has the first question for the panel.
Yes, thank you all for being here. This is amazing. I'm so excited to talk with all of you all. As you know, this is a leadership panel, so we're going to jump right into it. I think it's important that we set the stage for what that means. So as we know, the term leadership is a pretty broad term, right? And it can be interpreted in so many ways. From your perspective, from the work that you all are doing, I would love to hear from each of you the way in which you would define leadership and the ways in which it's necessary within the Black community today. And we could start with Troy, if that's okay.
Sure. I think leadership is the fuel. I can only speak for myself. I am a hands-on leader. Definitely one that is a shower and a doer rather than a teller. Sometimes I'm challenged with delegating, and just because I like to lead from the front. So my personal style of leadership, or my definition of leadership, would be one that shows rather than tells, knows and is aware of every job, may not do every job, but definitely is aware of every job, and has a sense of accountability that brings the best out of those that he or she serves.
Cool. Antoine, you want to hop in and answer that?
Yeah, definitely. Again, I agree with you, Troy. For me, leaders have to, in my opinion, lead from the front. Sometimes, sometimes people will be able to see what you do, and be able to, and that's enough for them. But sometimes people, it's going to take more than that, right? It's going to take more than that for people to develop as leaders. But I see leaders as being empathetic people, very, very self-aware people. And again, strategic thinkers. You gotta, if you're trying to lead a group to go somewhere, you gotta, as a leader, you gotta know sort of what your vision want to be. But at the same time, you got to be very self-aware and empathetic with your team, or with the people that you're trying to help in order to make that happen. Because sometimes I feel like in our community we have a lot of people out there doing things that they think our community needs, but if you get on the ground and you talk to the people to see what we need, what they think, it's probably not even what our people need. So if you want to be a leader, you've got to be empathetic, and you've got to be there talking and getting the insight from the people that you want to help and that you want to lead before you can be an effective leader.
Great, thanks so much. And Tulupe, your take on that, on the how would you define leadership, and how does it show up in the work that you do?
Well, I believe that leadership, of course, starts with the leader, right? I believe that in what Brother Antoine said, that leaders have to be strategic thinkers. I was take it a step further and say that leaders need to be systems thinkers in addition to strategic thinkers. I agree with Brother Troy said that it's important to lead from the front. But I also want to challenge that, to both the brothers saying that, and saying that I also believe that a leader leads from the middle, from the back. I believe that a leader is a person who inspires and motivates people in a specific direction, and then can collectively bring people together for a outcome or individual or gathered cause. Which to me would be which to me is more of a definition of what a leader is. And I believe from that standpoint, you should be able to lead from the head of the table, from the middle of the table, from the tail of the table. A leader should be the thermostat, not the thermometer. A leader should be able to be the one to set the temperature, or set the tone in the room, regardless of their role or position at the space. I believe that person is a leader. I believe that a leader is also a person who does lead with transparency, with integrity. But that's my definition, because we've also seen people who are true literal leaders who are immoral and, liars. We kind of just went through that. We actually see people who are truly leaders who don't lead with that space. But I do believe that a true leader, if we're talking about in this community sense, is a person who can inspire and motivate people and bring people together for a collective outcome or a cause for the greater good of the group.
And to Lulupe, I agree. If you don't mind me interjecting, I know I spent a couple of years leading my fraternity chapter. I was the president of my chapter, and again, I'm like you. I'm not one who can just, I don't want to just sit at the front and just say I'm the president. No, I was always down in the trenches doing anything, right? I mean, because I think that's how you inspire people. Leaders should be willing to do the dirty work, to do anything, right? Jump in there, lift boxes, do whatever it takes. And and I had some brothers who looked at me, and some brothers were like, well, you're the president, why are you doing that? Well, that's just me. That's just how I lead. And I feel like, people will take that and appreciate that by, being willing to do any and everything that you're going to ask anybody that you're asking to follow you to do. So I agree with you.
So let me ask a question. I want to ask Lupe this question. I'm going to pick on her a little bit because of her shirt. At one point, the Black community had what I would say were notable leaders, right? Malcolm was a leader. Harriet was a leader. Martin was a leader. I'm sure whoever else was on the bottom of the Lupe shirt was a leader, right? Marcus Garvey was a leader. But now it seems as though if you ask someone to name 5 leaders of the movement or 5 leaders who are helping us to get to freedom, which we talked about in the last panel, those names can be few and far between, right? If someone asks me who the leaders are, the first person that comes to mind, honestly, for me, is Reverend William Barber. Just because I see the work that he's doing, I think he is someone who is trustworthy, someone who is not going to lead people astray. But honestly, after that, it gets a little murky for me. So why do you think that there is a lack of, and I'll say notable leaders, right? People that we all can identify as the leaders in our community who are helping us, right? We see people on TV when things happen. We see Jesse Jackson and we see Al Sharpton and we see now Ben Crump on TV when there are issues and things that happen. But I don't know if I would necessarily consider those folks to be the leaders. So Tulupe, talk to us and let us know, why do you think there is a lack of notable names in that leadership role? And does it matter, right? Or does it matter?
Well, I think a couple things. I think that the fact that there are no longer singular names that you can pull up to call leaders is by design. I think systemically, I believe that it's not necessary for our community to have one leader. I believe that if you look through our history of organizations and leaders who did rise up, they were met with criticism from the government level, from community level. They were met with propaganda. And there's just not a lot of people, I don't think, that want to withstand what it takes to be like those people, Malcolm and Martin and Marcus and Frederick and Huey and Bobby, and like the list goes on, Asada and Angela and all of those people. I think that we appreciate the struggle and we appreciate their sacrifice, but I don't think that there are very many people made today like they made them in the past who are willing to make that same or equal sacrifice. I think that a lot of us live in a bit more fear now than we did back then because we've been blessed with more comfort than we had back then. Or at least some symbolic measure of the comfort that they did not have even symbolic measures of back in those days. So we've been lulled to sleep in a large amount of ways, to where it's not until something like a young man is killed by the police or something like that happens that we even look for a leader in our community. I believe that the breakdown of our communities that we see, the breakdown of the family structure and the breakdown of communities in general, shows us that piece. I believe that our Black communities become way more individualized. Got to get mine, you got to get yours, and me, myself, and I'm worried about me and mine. Like, that whole thing is something that is relatively new to our community over like the last 40 years, whereas back in the day we used to host rent parties and we used to do different things more community minded and more together. We had that more centralized piece, and now we don't. And I think it opens up the space to be more divisive in our community, so that we reject leaders or we'll scrutinize leaders if they make it through the whole press of, whatever the system may try to throw at them. So I think there are people out here, not to say there are not people out here who are moving and living like the people were in the past. But I do believe that those people are few and far between, and those people are more localized than they are nationalized.
Okay,
Antoine, what you think?
I agree with her completely. I mean, I think the era that we live in today, we do have a lot of leaders out there, and they're out there doing their thing. They're in the trenches doing their work. But I think right now we have a lot of organizations that are very, very siloed, right? And a lot of different communities all around the country out there doing very, very good work to a point where we don't need one centralized leader. I don't know if we need it at the moment. I don't know if those days will ever come back, because I mean things move so much faster than they did back then, and I don't see us all throwing our shoulders around, behind four people. I don't. Do we need that? I'm not sure. But I think the good work that is being done by people out there in these individual communities, like Troy, like Tallulah Pay, the work that they're doing, I mean, it's great. It's all pushing in the same direction. But like the My Brother's Keepers and My Sister's Keeper, that's sort of trying to help us from doing our siloed work to a degree of pulling us together as a unit, which is good. But do we need one figurehead? No, I don't think we need one figurehead that's gonna save us. I think everybody just got to put their shoulders to the wheel and do what they're doing where they're doing it. And like with Brother Barber, same thing. I mean, if I could look at him as being a leader, he's one, but at the same time, he's not. I don't think he even has himself in the same position of a king and a Garvey, just by his mentality and the way he's actually working. He's definitely pulling in collective groups to do stuff. Right, there are a lot of groups that are out there doing some work. He's very, very good at pulling those people all to the table at the same time for that are doing different things, but we're all pointed toward the same North Star. So. So I don't know if we need that right now.
Antoine, let me ask you this. You talked about the table. Is it possible, and I'll ask both of you this, is it possible to have too many chefs in the kitchen at this point, right? Is it possible that we're not collectively able to get these issues resolved because there are too many people kind of taking us in different directions? Right? Is the table for us to all sit down and collectively have conversations, or is the table that's set right now filled with folks who are, I'll say, trying to stir the pot, for lack of a better term?
I see us right now having a lot of people, at the table, but at the same time, you've got different groups doing different things. Troy's doing things different than I am. Tallulah Pay is doing different things than Troy is. And so I think we need to come together and share and maybe take bits and pieces from each other and go do our separate work. But I think when we come together to try to form one big thing, that's when we have issues. And I think those issues aren't just for us. Those issues were there back in King's day. Those issues were there back in Marcus Garvey's day. These groups want to do their own thing their way, but I think as long as they're all again focusing us, to rising ourselves, rising our people, then we're good. What Troy's doing, hey, as long as it's not taking us backwards, I'm all for it. Whatever Tallulah Pay's doing, as long as she's progressing our people and it's positive, I'm all for it. But if she's going to go out, if she's out here, doing XYZ with her organization, that's really, pulling down the work that Troy's doing, by negatively affecting our community, then that's a problem, right? But as long as we're all progressing in the same direction in different ways, I'm okay with it.
Cool.
Sure. And answer that question too. I think it's important for everybody, and I don't think I used this analogy the last group. I don't remember if it was this group. I think it's important for everybody to have their way of doing things. You know what I'm saying? I think that we all are going to do that because we all are gifted either by train or by the divine to do what we're doing one way or the other. And I think that so long as we're making sure that we're moving in alignment with our organizations in that matter, that's important. I don't consider that a table. I believe a table is where you bring people together doing their own different things and then work with that space. I think that there are a lot of tables out there, some of which are working to advance communities, some of which believe they are, some of which know they not, and they're actually working to, hurt different people in vulnerable communities. Some of those tables are made up of people that look like the people in those vulnerable communities that they're looking to hurt. I think the importance when you say table, I think it's important to have the right people around the table. And those are people who are willing to do their own part, but understand how their part impacts a larger piece and how that larger piece pushes the community forward. And I think that when I originally started the planning for the MBK Wake initiative here, we cast a wide net, just trying to see what the landscape was, who all is out there, what is everyone doing. And to be honest, I was very naive. Like, everybody's going to come to the table and we're all going to work together and we're all going to do X, Y, Z, LMNOP. And the reality of that, we're all not in this for the same reason. Even if we're making great outcomes, we're all in it. Everybody's in that wide net pulling. You bring in people from every space. So then it becomes more important to make sure that you pick through and pick the right people to be at the table, people who are willing to work together, because not everybody's willing to do that. People who are willing to put their egos to the side and know that sometimes they will step up and lead, and sometimes they got to step up and let somebody else lead, especially when it's their expertise. Not everybody's going to be willing to do that. People who will be willing to move discreetly about coming together and working together, because we know systemically that loose lips sink ships, especially in our movements. Not everybody's willing to come together and work discreetly. Not everybody's willing to come together and put themselves to the side, or their ideologies to the side, or come together for the purpose of coming together and not an ulterior motive. Not everybody's coming together for the cause. Some people are coming together for themselves, to network, to do whatever they want to do. So I think it's important for us, when we're talking about building a table, to be intentional about who you invite to have a seat at that table. That's why there's a bunch of different tables. But I believe that as long as the work of one table is aligned with the good of the people, then that is the work that progresses. Also, I think it's important not be concerned about other tables and what other people are doing if it's not going to feed into the progress of your community, and if there's no way to collaborate with it. Like, I think sometimes we're so distracted by what's going on over here or over there that we lose sight of what we need to be doing. And I think that can sometimes derail us largely as a community when it comes to our leadership, or us coming together as a community to really move the needle. Ego comes in play, but I think that's a human condition. But it happens to happen a lot when it comes to us. So I think that if we can come together in a space where we can put that aside, know where we can do our input, know where we won't put our input in, actually be willing to step forward and do the work after the meeting and not just keep meeting to meet or talk, then I think that we can do something. I think that it can be something worthwhile. And I think that we are doing something, to be honest. But I think that it's important that when we're in that space doing that thing, that we do it properly, with intention and with discretion.
Troy, you want to chime in?
What was the question?
We were discussing leadership and how many people are at the table. Are there too many people at the table? Do you think there should be more people at the table, in terms of how we can look at the past, the leaders of the past, like Malcolm, Harriet, Marcus, and compare to the leaders that we have now?
There's no way to compare the two. We have too many mediums now to even ever see another Malcolm. I agree, heavy is the head that wears the crown. So with the mediums that we have to get information out, there'll never be a galvanized source around one person ever again, because everybody's a prophet now. Everybody is a spokesperson from God. So with the fickleness of people, would those type of juggernauts of leaders ever come about? Probably not. However, I do think that there has to be a sense of accountability on each and every one of us, regardless of whether you feel you hold the title or not. There has to be a sense of accountability and leadership in our own homes. And really, it starts with you. It really does, man. Soul man thinketh in his heart, so is he. So, will it ever come back around? No. However, if each and every one of us, in our own sense of responsibility, in our own sense of wanting to put good into the world in whichever capacity that we have, can take accountability for that, I think it will continue to mold. I think that that voice will continue to be heard.
Tiff, you got the next question?
Yes, I do. So, when you all gave your introductions, everyone kind of spoke about maybe kind of some of like the specific subsets of the Black community that you all work more closely with. We of course know that the Black community is not a monolith, that we all have, our different, goals and passions and needs. And so thankful to you all for doing the work to address some of those. But I would be curious from each of you all, if you could kind of talk about what are some of the like pressing issues within maybe the subgroups or the subsets of the community that you work with? And then what type of leadership specifically do you think is necessary in order to help address some of these issues? And if we could start with Troy, I think that would be great.
Children are my fire. It's my purpose. It's my why. It's what wakes me up at 2 in the morning. And every day we're around a different group of children. We work specifically in the elementary school realm as a vendor for Wake County Public School System. And initially we approached the work thinking that 4th and 5th grade, hey, this is the target population that we want to put a lot of the energy in, looking to be more proactive than reactive. But what we came to find out, in this past school year, just from that target population, that there was so much more that was needed in the earlier grades, 2nd grade. We're talking about kids that are used to people walking out of their lives or dealing with several layers of trauma before they even get to the house, whether it's food disparities, maybe a displacement of love, or a vivid definition of sex that's being shown towards them. And a lot of those expressions and behaviors are now spilling over into the classroom, the way that they treat themselves as well as others. So, right now, when it comes to a call of action, I would ask that, one, we give ourselves grace, give our children grace, and then they deserve consistency of presence to show up for them. At the end of the day, we think so macro, we think such on a big level. Oh, we went to DC. Oh, they were donated this and donated that. Oh, they were exposed to this person that has all these letters behind their name. And that's great. I think exposure will always be needed. However, from a person that does this day in, day out, 24/7, 365, the presence speaks volume. A kid wants to know that you'll show up for him, and when you say you're going to do something for him, that you actually do it. That's the space where we start. And if we can do that more readily, I think all of the other things will eventually work itself out, because familiarity breeds trust. And where hope plus options equals success, kids lack hope. Well, of course, they're going to go towards unfavorable decisions. They lack the very thing that keeps them moving forward. And options, hey, I don't know if anybody likes taking tests, but the best test I ever took was multiple choice. So options will always be the piece of the puzzle. And when we combine those things, I believe, in my opinion, in the work that we've done consistently since 2017, that breeds success.
Perfect. I want to come back to that if we have time, because I think you spoke to some really good things there. But Antoine, if you could speak next.
I agree with Troy. Consistency, meeting kids where they are and gaining their trust, because the programs that I used to run were pretty much, what Troy was saying. It's like I started a program working with upper age kids, and certain groups of children are harder to reach than others. But I was bombarded with parents of younger little boys saying, hey, there's nothing there for my 3rd grader. There's nothing out there for my 3rd grader. Big brothers, big sisters had a waiting list. So one of the programs that we put together was working with the young boys from the 2nd to the 5th grade. I mean, that was our target age as well. Because again, molding, helping, once you can gain the trust of a 2nd or 3rd grader, their minds are there, for you to help them learn and mold and become whatever they want to be. And again, it's like Troy said, you can't just show, I've got a bachelor's degree, master's degree, PhD, to a 3rd grader, that means nothing. A 3rd grader wants to make sure you're going to be there for them, and help them find their way. but they've got to gain your trust first. And I think once you can gain their trust, then you can show them what they can become, and not really, let's say, educationally and career wise, but just show them that they have the capacity right now to make decisions and to change the world, to come up. I mean, the world's always waiting for the next big idea, and who's to say at third grade that you don't have that? And again, we have to open ourselves up as adults to be able to ask children different things and to pull out of them, because we don't know what kind of geniuses we have amongst us, because they could, like Troy said, they could be going through some stuff right now that's suppressing and burying that thing down. So we just need to be there for them, consistency, gain their trust, and then once we do that, we can pop the top off of that thing, and then get in there with them and be able to actually show them, and again, sometimes I think you have to be going back to learning and being strategic. Sometimes you have to show kids that you've got to teach them how to be strategic, and that's how I work with my own children. I'm like, you got to think this thing out. You can't just say, okay, I'm trying to do this and it failed, and okay, I'm just going to go to my room. No, you can't do that. You got to say, okay, everybody fails. You got to figure out the next step, right? What's the next step? And there are things out there that we can, all of kids will shock you. All you have to do is show them the way, get their minds thinking, and I'm a strategist. I'm an innovationist. I think the way my mind works, my mind works in a logical, format. And like you said, to pay, systems thinking, that's me. and when you take that to little kids, and teach them and let them know, okay, well, it's kind of like a science experiment, right? If you show them, this is how you work through a science experiment, they'll latch on to that logic, and they'll hold on to it, and just let them know that they can use that same logic to do anything. They can use that same logic to go out here and save our community. Right. That's the same sort of logic that you have to have. You have to be able to, jump in, be on the ground, see what's going on, find that one little nugget of change that you can make that nugget of change. You can't fix it all on your own. Just find that one little piece to your cornerstone that you can do. We work with a group of boys where we're like, okay, hey, you got to come up with a service project. Okay. They went out, dug around. They were like, we want to do something with the homeless. Okay. What do you want to do? We put them out there. They came back. Hey, Mr. Antoine, we found out that the number one item that the homeless people look for and ask for are socks. Okay, so what are you going to do? They held a sock drive. Next thing I know, they've got 10,000 pairs of socks that they're donating to the homeless shelter downtown Raleigh. And again, these are boys, this group of boys were mostly middle school and high school. But again, it's just a thing. We weren't going to tell them what to do. We were just going to say, oh, ask them the next question, right? That trains them to be strategic and thinkers. So, I'd say let's just do that.
And to Lulupe, any insight? We've talked kind of about children. Any insight about young adults and some pressing issues and ways in which specific types of leadership is necessary to kind of help them in their development?
I would say, okay, so I address a couple different populations, a couple different ways. And I think it's about knowing who you are serving, and then knowing what that population needs and serving that population that way, because it's not a one size fits all, like Antoine said. We have young people in our organization that we meet with consistently. So of course they need consistency. A lot of them need food. We're doing some instruction with them. So they need that instruction. They need a bit of tutoring. Sometimes they need to sit to the side and have somebody that's just going to listen to them about what they're going through at home and give them a break from everything. We do that. We provide that as a direct service. Then we also do programming where we help masses of students. Like I said, we have this program in Eastern Carolina this weekend. Same one hosted a couple months ago for the Youth Caucus. On that perspective, it's just about programming. What knowledge can we give this pot of students? How can we track whether or not what they knew before they came and what they're knowing while they're leaving, to show how effective we're being to these young people, and track outcomes and not just impact, right? And then we address the collaborative. The collaborative is our way of supporting organizational leaders of color that are serving communities of color. In that perspective, some of them need funding, some of them need training, some of them need a moment away. We've actually paid for vacations for some leaders of color because we understand that burnout is major in our community. And that's something that we're experiencing largely. We understand that they don't have the resources that other organizations may have to be able to take a break. And we know that Black people don't take breaks as often as other people. We know how COVID has impacted us from a mental health perspective as leaders. And I think that as leaders of a community that is traumatized, and oftentimes us being leaders who are traumatized ourselves and functioning out of that trauma, then we need support in that area. We don't think about who's helping the people who are helping the people. So our focus is that. How are we giving to that pot of people? How are we building their capacity? How are we making it just a little bit better? So we try to address things from a micro and macro perspective, the direct service for the youth, being consistent, things of that nature. But we know when it comes to leaders, they need the same thing. They need consistency. They need trust. They need space. They need resources. They need the ability to have a space to be vulnerable without feeling like somebody's going to take advantage of them. They need the ability to be a space to let the wall down, to collaborate without feeling like somebody's going to steal their idea or steal something from them. So we provide that through MOUs, and we also provide that through the service and support that we give those specific leaders. So I think that going back to what Brother Antoine said, when you're addressing a population, you have to ask them what they need. So each population needs something different. The only difference is when you're working with youth, they have more responsibility of showing up and being engaged than adults do, to have responsibility to make sure that there's a part that they have to play outside of that. So comes some of that too, of us having those conversations, and that also is where trust and relationships are built. So that's something that leaders need: trust, relationship, consistency. They need a space to be vulnerable. They need a space to mentally heal. They need capacity. Youth also need some of those same measures and things. Then they also need access to other leaders, whether they have multiple letters behind their name or none at all.
No, that's amazing. And I definitely agree. Like, you have to kind of reach people where they are and help them from there. This has been an amazing conversation. Unfortunately, we are at the end of this leadership panel. As we close out, I would love to ask each of you to share just one resource that you want to highlight as it pertains to leadership development for whatever population that you would love to share. So share like one resource that you would like to highlight, and then also where folks can follow you using your social media if you have it. And we'll start with Troy.
I would like to encourage those who are in the Southeast Raleigh corridor to tap into the YMCA on Rock Quarry Road. Accessibility to some of the resources they have for the summertime. Swimming and learning how to ride a bike, man, 2 essential tools. What happens if? So definitely would encourage that. I also want to encourage those that are looking for resources and mentoring for underserved youth, especially young Black males, ages 7 to 17, to go to @YoungMen4Christ. That's @YoungMen4Christ on Instagram, or just YM4C on Facebook. Feel free to do such that, or give me a call, 919-714-9905, for exposure to some of the things such as golf, video game design, boxing, football, career development, and community conversations to bridge the gaps. So again, Troy Jermaine Johnson.
Perfect. Thank you, Troy. Antoine?
Yeah, I want to thank you guys for allowing me to participate in this. It's good to finally meet Troy. It's good to meet Tolupe as well. I sort of watch people that are doing different things in the community. I'm a big watcher of Troy. Troy, some of the things that you're doing sort of helped me launch my own podcast. I've been watching your podcast, so I appreciate all the work you're doing. And Tolupe, I'm glad to hear that you're leading up the program where you're trying to pull together organizations to the table, sort of to find out, share, collaborate, and things like that. But for me, I'm sort of, kind of in between, the work that I'm doing. Done a bunch of things early my days here in Wake County, and my goal really was, okay, I got these 2 daughters of mine. I need to get off into college, so I sort of pulled back a little bit, and then went out and started getting some more education myself. for myself. And again, that's where that strategic thing came from. And I've got something sort of in the works right now that may be coming out soon. Where my goal is to introduce kids to this critical thinking and this whole strategic mindset. And again, meeting them where they are, doing it sooner than later. Because again, I mean, if you think you're going to wait to introduce certain things like that to a kid that's 17 and 19, not saying it can't be done, but why not? Why do that when you can introduce it to them in the second and third grade? So so be on. I'll let Dion know about that project that I'm working on. But again, you guys can follow me on my podcast, the Forced Pivot podcast, on all your podcast platforms, on all the social media. It should be at the Forced Pivot. Check me out. I'm bringing people on just to find out how, because again, with like young people, life's going to turn us around. Life's going to take us up and down, left and right. We've got to teach these young people to how to withstand that. How do you withstand that? How do you get up from being knocked on your back? Because life is going to do that, right? And if we can teach them and encourage them enough to be able to get up, once they get up, they've got to get up with the strategic mind of, okay, how am I going to proceed, right? And so that's sort of where my goal is. So again, in the middle of working some different things, and again, I just got I just reread the Miseducation of the Negro by Carter G. Woodson, and it's really twisted my mind a bit, because I was headed down this road where I thought that just introducing kids and bombarding kids with Black history was going to be enough. That's not going to be enough. We got to help these kids learn how to think. If we can teach them how to think, the Black history on top of it, great. But we can't just thinking that's going to be the savior of the day. We got to teach them how to think. So I got a project that's slinging out there. It's called the Colored School. The Colored School. The name is provocative. Some people have been trying to get me to change the name, but I'm going to be very intentional. The Colored School will be somewhere we can help these kids learn how to think, because all the different other cultures have Saturday schools that they go to. My neighbors had their kids going to Korean school. We don't have a school, right? So the Colored School. Be on the lookout for that. The Colored School. So thanks for having me.
Yes, that's amazing. And Talulupe, thank you again for staying with us for the second panel today. Really quickly, if you just want to share your social media.
Yes, you can find me on Instagram at I am Talulupe O, on LinkedIn Talulupe Omokaye, on Facebook Evolve Mentoring, or My Brother's Keeper Wake County. Also on Instagram Evolve_MBSK Wake. I also want to shout out our website, which is evolvementoring.org. We are building a directory of service providers there, so that people can know what other resources there are out there for their youth that they can use. You can reach me at contact@evolvementoring.org. I want to kind of break the rules for a quick second, just give a quick list of resources. Is that okay?
Really quick, please.
Okay. So Accelerating Men, Thomas Mentoring Leadership Academy, Fannie Lou Hamer Institute, SOAR Outreach, the Gifted Arts, The Well, Haven House, just a plethora of organizations. Go to ncnonprofits.org to find other organizations. But I know that a lot of people feel like there's not a lot of resources. NC Child. There's a lot of organizations out there doing work, serving community for youth and families. So I just encourage people to Google and research what they need in the county or city that they're in.
Perfect. Thank you all so much. Happy Juneteenth. We are going to take a quick 2-minute break before our last and final panel. Thank you again for being here.
Happy Father's Day
to everybody.
Don't forget the fellas neither, man. Happy Father's Day to y'all, man.
That's right. Happy Father's Day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Happy Father's Day. Thank you so much.
Yeah, exactly.
Alvin, go for it.
Welcome back, everyone, for our third and final segment of the Black People Parenting Juneteenth Summit. This segment is going to focus on legacy. This is my personal favorite because it's, what are we leaving behind? Who are we cultivating? How are we helping them? Right? So we have some panelists here. We have Mrs. Tiffany Lewis, and then we have two gentlemen from By the Hood, Jimmy and Corey. Thank y'all so much for attending the panel today. I think we have one more attending, but as soon as she joins, I will introduce her. So let's get right into it. You both are coming from, you two sets, because Jimmy and Corey are together. Oh, hey, Angelique. So we also have Miss Angelique Stallings here. So we'll give everyone a chance to introduce themselves, tell us what you do, and just a brief background on how you got started. Let's start with Mrs. Tiffany Lewis.
Oh, yay. Start with me. Hey, everybody. So I am Tiffany Lewis. Thanks, guys, for having me. So I'm a mom of 3 sons. I am a serial entrepreneur across 5 industries, one being a licensed insurance agent. And I also am a personal and professional development coach for adults and a social emotional learning coach for children and youth, even on an institutional level. So helping schools and organizations develop and create a cell environment where they can learn to incorporate those necessary and critical skills into their everyday learning. So I am definitely glad to be here. I think I became a serial entrepreneur once I started learning about legacy and insurance and learning how to create real generational wealth for my family. I watched my great grandmother die in 2018, and, it was very crippling to lose the anchor of the family. And in that moment, my entire family just froze. It's like everybody became paralyzed. And I ended up having to handle all of the business from calling the coroner to the benediction at the funeral home. And ironically, the funeral home offered me a job after the funeral was over. And it was such a taxing process to try to grieve, but also try to handle business and make sure that the necessary things were taken care of in the process. So after that experience, I learned how African American families are typically unprepared. They have great intentions, especially our older ancestors, our older family members. They have great intentions. They typically have the family home. It's always a place where you can go and gather. It is a place where you can go live and stay. But there are so many missing components, and so that experience allowed me to to really start focusing on our youth, but also on our future and our legacy as African American households. So I'll talk more about that later, but that's typically my area of expertise. So glad to join you guys and be a part of the conversation.
Thank you so much, Tiffany. And we'll move on to our friends with By the Hood. I'll let y'all decide who goes first.
Okay. All right. Well, Corey, I just want you to know you're muted before you start, but I'll go first. So good morning, everybody. First and foremost, I want to say thank you guys for giving this opportunity to speak on this panel. So thank you guys for putting this entire event together. It's been amazing. I've been sitting back watching everything, and this has just been a great event. So I want to say thank you for allowing us to participate. My name is Jimmy Williams of By the Hood, one half of By the Hood. My background is in real estate. So I've done everything in real estate as a real estate developer, landlord, investor, worked as a real estate agent. I've also worked in other parts of financial services. I'm a former licensed life insurance as well as securities agent. So I've done everything within the finance space, and we created this organization known as By the Hood, which is a community organization. And our goal was to talk about the power of ownership within our communities. My brother Corey, who you hear from in a second, we went to high school together, and we've had these constant debates about, what's the most important part of helping to uplift our community. He's in education, and I'm pretty sure he'll tell his story. So we decided to partner together because we have a full university called By the Hood University, where we teach adults about everything about the power of ownership, from real estate to the stock market, crypto, precious metals, a little bit of everything. But Corey's idea was we need to teach the youth, right? We have to teach the youth and to bring the youth along. So as we talk about this whole legacy conversation, this is intriguing to us because we believe in holistic wealth and not just talking about specific instruments, but talking about legacy and talking about the importance of multi generations having the information. So we've created what's known as the By the Hood Camp, which is coming up, actually starts a week from today, where this will be our 7th year. We have a free camp every summer for the youth, ages 5 and up, and we talk to them about the power of ownership. We teach them about money. We teach them about investing, and we have a lot of success stories from students as young as 5, and as old as their early 20s. And we talk to them about money, what is money, how money is created. We talk to them about the power of compound interest. So there's a lot of things that we get into, but we also talk to their parents. So this idea of legacy is very important to us, and I look forward to having this conversation, but don't want to take up too much time, so I'll let Corey tell you about himself.
Hey, y'all. My name is Corey, the other half of the By the Hood team. My background is in education. I'm a teacher by trade. The thing that Jim was talking about, where we wanted to make it multi-generational, is because I teach in the special education realm, where I help parents to get the services from schools that they are supposed to get, and I also help the schools to provide those services. And so the legacy building piece of this is that if you can build strong children, then they'll move that legacy onto their children, right? So the earlier you get the education, the more time you get to practice it. And so we wanted to get the kids started early, and which is why our By the Hood Camp is the thing that we most take pride in, and the thing that we put the most time into. And so when we talk about legacy building, it's you can build from multiple fronts, right? So we're not here to tell people whatever front they're building on is the wrong front. We're just going to build on the front that we have our expertise in. And so ownership is for everybody. And most of these children don't understand the power of ownership and things that when you own things and you're able to, it gives you a different momentum and movement in life. And we want our children to be able to have that momentum and movement.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm Angelique Stallings. The job that pays me, I'm the Vice President of Community Investment for the Greater Durham Chamber of Commerce. But the work that moves me is the work of Black people. So I've all of my life been in sales, but I was doing DE&I work before DE&I was cool or a buzzword. Usually being the only, and I know a lot of you can relate, the only Black person in a room, a Black woman in a room. We've been doing this work a long time before anyone thought that it was a box to be checked. So I do a lot of work in the community where we are making the voices heard of our folks so that things aren't just happening to us, so that we have a voice in the situation and in the matter to make sure that our generational and legacy families that live specifically in Durham for my work are not just pushed out and gentrified in such a way that we don't even recognize Durham anymore. I am the parent of one daughter who has recently received her life insurance license in order to continue to help and do that work. She is in graduate school at Georgetown University, though, wanting to be an owner in the NFL. So that is one of her other dreams. But in so doing, we are continuing and building legacy in our family. So I'm happy to be here and look forward to the conversation. Thank you.
Dope. Thank y'all for those introductions and talking about what it is that you all are doing. I wanna have a conversation first about economic development. Corey said something that made me think about economic development and what it looks like for us, because it looks different. It's not just, I don't think it's just a job program, a job creation program. I don't think it's just setting people up, to be sustained for the next 2 to 3 years. I think it's deeper than that. So I want to know, what does economic development look like for you all in the work that you do, and what does it look like going forward, especially coming out of what seems to be an ongoing recession, oncoming recession that we're facing. So what does economic development look like for our communities, for you all? I'm going to start with Jim.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was sitting there writing down as you were talking. So economic development, right? So that's an interesting conversation because you brought up a couple things and asking a question. So for me, it's about job creation. That's the first thing I think of when you talk about economic development for our community. One of the things that I know that Corey and I talk about within our specific market is providing opportunities for people to feed their family. Literally, job creation is something that we're very, very passionate about and we're working towards, because this is a way to, it starts with income, right? Regardless of what we think about jobs, what have you, but you have to start with income. And a lot of times in our community, what we see is our best and brightest, there's a constant brain drain that happens. So we send them to these amazing schools, they get educations, and then when they come back, they're not able to bring that energy, that the information they have, and bring it back to the community because there are no jobs there. So they're forced to leave, and they're forced to, give their genius to someone else in someone else's community. So I think it's incumbent upon us to provide opportunities, but also this economic engine that we will help us in future generations. So when you talk about the infrastructure, that's kind of where we are. We're behind in most things, right? So I pride myself on supporting Black business, but there are just certain industries that I have a difficult time doing so. An example would be like a supermarket or things like that. But we have to start somewhere. And then once we start, we build out, but we have to provide opportunities for those that come behind us to be able to serve our communities, right? It's easy to say to bring your information and your knowledge back, but what I see is a constant brain drain. Our best and brightest don't even have the opportunity to come back. And, so we have to really solve that issue right there.
So, Tiffany, what you think?
I think I agree. I definitely believe that creating opportunity is super important. It's kind of why when I say I'm a serial entrepreneur across 5 industries, why I am. When I start a business, I'm always looking for opportunities to give other people a chance to serve, to work, again, to feed their families. I think it's also important to, when we talk about economic development, work on having a positive impact on a lot of our people. And what I mean by that is because sometimes there are jobs and opportunities, but a lot of people are not inspired or compelled to serve in a way to help their community. It's typically very competitive. Everybody wants to compete instead of to collaborate. And so what is important for me, in addition to creating opportunities for people to work, feed their families, is also to feel included in something big, to be a huge part of the solution, to be inspired by the work that you do, not just to feed your family, but to create a hand horizontally to help somebody else. So for me, when I hire people, it's not just to give you an opportunity. Our culture in all of our businesses is that we serve other people, and we don't just serve, we lead, we teach, we inspire, which means when I give you a job or opportunity, if there are people that you know, I'll give you a prime example. We have a trucking business where we transport, and we transport and haul non-CDLs. So this is hot shot trucking. We were just throwing spaghetti at the wall, trying a thing, and we saw how we were able to give a driver a job, create an opportunity for him when he felt like there were no opportunities, give him a flexible schedule, and do all of these things. But we also created a culture of camaraderie. We are family. We work together. How can we serve you as you serve us? And, we try to offer great incentives and invitations for you to feel included and take pride in what you're doing for other people. So what happened is he began to call his friends. I work for this company and it's super great. I think you should give it a chance, but they don't. You have to be on time. You have to be, it's just, I want them to feel inspired to collaborate instead of compete. So I do think that that is a huge part of it, making sure that we create opportunities, but that we create opportunities that you feel like you're serving something bigger than yourself, and why we do it, not just to feed your family. I love By the Block because that's literally like a personal mission. I want to buy the block. I say that all the time. I'm late. I'm a little behind. I'm going to be in class if I can get there in a week. But I believe in buying the block, but I want you to buy the block. We all need to buy the block. We all need to, and we need to inspire the block. We need and encourage the block. That's just what I believe. So, I'm a big dreamer, and economic empowerment really starts inside, and it has to be bigger than you just feeding your family, like, to me.
So let's go Corey and then Angelique with the question about economic development.
All right. Economic development starts with environment, right? And putting people in an environment where they can thrive, right, instead of just survive. And so what we try to do is create thriving environments so people can do the things that they want to do instead of doing the things they have to do all the time. Not that the things that they have to do aren't important, but if you can't do anything that you want to do, you're always going to feel like you're behind the eight. And so creating thriving environments is part of economic empowerment, right? So I teach in the special education realm, right? And the one thing that I know about people, and because I modify behavior all the time, is that your environment is 100% of what is going on with you, right? And so if you can create environments where people thrive, right? And my favorite thing that I say is, just because a cactus thrives in the desert doesn't mean that all the plants that we have on the planet should grow in the desert, right? If just because people thrive in bad environments for the very most part doesn't mean that they should have to thrive in bad environments. And so we should create environments as people who have resources that allow the people who don't have those resources to thrive in those environments. Now, nothing is perfect, and everybody doesn't have, the wherewithal or the want to thrive. But if you created the environment, then more people will thrive. So economic empowerment, like when we say buy the hood, we're not just talking about buying property. We're talking about buying into one another, right? And so we're talking about buying into the neighborhoods that we're already in, buying into the people that are already in those neighborhoods. It's not just buying property. And so that's an environmental thing, not just a physical, buy buildings thing. Yes, we need to own things, but the one thing that we have to own is our culture. We have to be accountable to one another. We have to own situations. And part of that owning the situation is creating thriving environments. And so when I talk about economic empowerment, the first thing I'm always going to talk about is the trauma and the things that are behind the reasons that we aren't thriving in those situations, because it all starts with us. And so we have to create an environment where people will be able to receive the information that we give them, do something with the information that we're giving them, because we can give people information 100 times, and if they're not in a position to receive it and do something with it, that information is going on deaf ears. So it's about getting people in the spot where they can do something with because there's tons of programs in neighborhoods, and most people can't use them properly because they're not set up properly to use them. And so economic empowerment starts with us.
So, Angelique?
Yeah, so I want to give a different lens on economic development from a Chamber of Commerce perspective, right? So, in Durham, which is where I am, Durham has, over the past few years, become very, very attractive to the life sciences because we have Research Triangle Park, we have North Carolina Central University, Duke University. We're in the triangle, so that also gives access to other universities. We recently had Google to come see us. Apple is right over the line. We have some other folks that's coming into the area. And when you look at people that are bringing their businesses into the area, they're looking at different components and environmental things that say, okay, what will make us want to come to an area? So with Durham, one of the things, of course, now with the I'm going to do DEI that everybody's wanting to do. They're looking for, diversity, HBCUs. They're looking for Black people, which is always interesting to me when people, organizations say, particularly in North Carolina, that they have a hard time finding Black people. And I'm like, well, I beg to differ. There are 10 HBCUs in said state. So I would just offer that you're not looking. But that's another story. So when we have organizations and businesses that are wanting to come to the area, they come through us, and we're helping them do site selections and those things. But as in my role, I'm saying, okay, what are you giving back to the community? How are you going to recycle those dollars? How are you going to make sure that you are hiring people that live in Durham, creating jobs and opportunities for them to be able to work at an Apple, that they're not just sweeping the floors and cleaning the toilets and cleaning offices? How are you going to do those types of create those opportunities? And then from another perspective, again, being in Durham, I've been here now for 30 years almost. It's so serendipitous that this is presented by M&F Bank, because Durham is, the Black Wall Street. Parish Street, if you go down Parish Street, that's considered the old Black Wall Street. We had M&F Bank, North Carolina Mutual, North Carolina Central. The founders were barbers. They were insurance agents. They were all of the things that helped to create an ecosystem, because they were creating jobs and they were all entrepreneurs. And so that right there, just trying to keep that culture, keep that history, keep that legacy, while the economic development, you have to grow. So in cities, you have to grow, you have to move. But how do you keep the integrity of said city, particularly Durham, which is, very culturally rich? Those types of opportunities where we create entrepreneurship as well as job creation, those things will be important in the ecosystem of the economic development.
And Angela, you mentioned M&F Bank, and I would be remiss if I didn't give them a shout out, because they are sponsoring this entire summit. So definitely huge shout out to M&F Bank. I want to ask Jim and Corey a question, because I know you guys deal with a lot of real estate in Philly, and I know y'all have your hands on a lot of things. What is our greatest tool? It's a two-part question, because I think Corey has said something previously in the conversation. I think it was Corey, but I want to know, what is our greatest tool in combating gentrification? And the second part of that question is, does gentrification need to be combated, or do we need to look at it through a different lens?
All right, so I'm gonna give you a non-traditional answer, right? Because, and I talk about this often, but it's on your shirt. Your shirt says it all, right? When we talk about Buy the Hood, we talk about economics, and we talk about building, the first thing we start with is love, right? And I know that's not a traditional answer. It's not, the X's and O's that most people look for. But I think that a lot, a lot starts there with Black love. When we really love one another, the neighborhoods, the areas that we're in are treated different. In the work that we do, we find that to be what's missing most, right? So we work in a lot of areas that have been gentrified, will be gentrified. And what we find is the way that we value our neighborhoods, historically speaking, we tend to have some of the better neighborhoods because they're closest to the central business district. A lot of times the way highways were built historically as a way to kind of, and I don't want to get too deep into this, but to kind of mess with our neighborhoods has become valuable in today's market in most areas. So we tend to have neighborhoods that have value, but the problem is we don't see value in them because of that missing piece of how we see each other, right? What I find in my work is people put value on their proximity to whiteness. I'm just going to say it, instead of understanding what we already have control over. So when you talk about gentrification, the thing about gentrification is all neighborhoods, regardless of where we're at in the country, whether we're in Philadelphia, whether we're in Raleigh, whether we're in California, go through what's known as the neighborhood life cycle. In that neighborhood life cycle, neighborhoods tend to have an increase in value. They'll stabilize, they'll decline, and then they'll be revitalized. The only thing that determines what part of the cycle it's in, which is constantly moving, is the level of ownership, because some neighborhoods stay in the stable part of the neighborhood life cycle for longer periods, and that's based on the amount of ownership and how people treat those specific neighborhoods. So to get back to your original question, you can't really combat it, because once a neighborhood starts to decline, it will be revitalized, right? But what part are we going to play in that? Are we going to be, part of the people investing into the environment? And there's ways for neighborhoods to be revitalized without people being misplaced. Because I think those are two different things. When people look at gentrification, a lot of times they're talking about people being misplaced, which doesn't have to happen. And this is why it's important to become a stakeholder and a landowner, because now you can have a say so in what's happening politically, which is all a part of this conversation. It's not just economic, it's politics as well. Because things can be put in place politically to help combat misplacement. But I think that it all starts with, like I said, what's on your shirt, that black love, because when you have that love and you start to see each other different and value the things that we already have, it just changes the entire dynamic of what gentrification is. And also the part that misplacement happens in, that's what people generally talk about when they use the word gentrification. It's become a dirty word.
It's because of the displacement of people that gentrification becomes a dirty word, right?
Yeah.
Because gentrification, all it is a revitalization of a neighborhood, but you're displacing the current residents with new residents, right? But the reason you can displace those current residents with new residents because the old residents don't value the neighborhood the same way as the new residents do, right? And so, again, I'm going to talk about the trauma loops, right? If you see somebody get hit in your neighborhood or get shot in your neighborhood, you're not going to have the same value as somebody who has never been in that neighborhood and hasn't seen all of those things, right? And
trauma.
So let's just say it's the trauma, right? And so you're trying as hard as you can to get away from that trauma instead of staying there and revitalizing and building what you see, right? So if I see drug dealing going on in my corner, and I see and my cousin got killed down the street, and I seen Miss Robinson get robbed a month ago, right? I'm not having the same experience as somebody who's never been in my neighborhood and only sees the value in the properties that's there, right? That property is near waterfront property. That property is near a school, is near a highway, and all they're seeing is the proximity to businesses and the proximity to other things, and they're not seeing the traumas that happen in that area every day. And so they have a different valuation system than we do. And so gentrification is not just about the displacement of citizens, it's about the trauma that in the current citizens that they're seeing, and they're not putting the effort into revitalizing the neighborhood because they're trying to get away from the trauma that's happening in those neighborhoods. And so we have to do something about that, right? Because again, I'm in a mental health capacity field. I'm never going to stop talking about the things that happen on a mental health side that create some of these opportunities for these other things that happen. This is an economic problem. This definitely is a problem about people not being able to hold on to things, but it's also about the trauma that and then the traumas that's been passed down, right? We have a mistrust of systems, right? We have a mistrust of each other, right? And we haven't been able to pass down things the proper way because we haven't been taught those ways to properly pass things down. We don't have life insurance at high enough rates. We don't have those kind of things that would make us value the things that we have at a higher rate. And so all of those traumas together create what, that vortex that gentrification brings, right? A lot of people don't mind being displaced from those neighborhoods. If you're going to come and buy my house for $50,000 and I've never had anything, now I got $50,000, I can go move somewhere where I haven't seen all that trauma. You know what I mean? And so, but now you lose a resident that could possibly, come in. That house might be worth $250,000 in 5 years, though. And I've seen that happen a bunch, right? Especially here in Philadelphia, but where we are college town, where there's 7 to 8 colleges within 10 miles of each other. You got a Ivy League university here. You got one of the top 10 engineering universities in the country. We have a lot of things here that would attract people to come here. And the thing about gentrification is that those people are not going to look like us, because, if I grew up around the University of Pennsylvania, which is an Ivy League college, right? But if you go 2 blocks one way or 2 blocks another way, you walking into an all-black neighborhood with nothing but traumas. And so those areas are easily gentrified because those people were ready to get up out of there. They was like, man, you're going to give me $50,000 for a house? I'm out. And now those houses are worth nearly $1 million. And so, and people were buying in. But what I'm saying is, and Jimmy talks about this, is that you can't just look at the numbers. You got to look at the politics. You got to look at the schools that's being built. You got to look at the jobs that's being created. And it's hard to see those things when you're so up close on them. It's like trying to see with your hand right in front of your face. If you could move your hand down a little bit and see what's going on around you, you wouldn't move. But you really can't see it because there's so much going on around with. I'm sorry for taking up so much time.
No, you're good. You're good. Tiffany, you wanted to say something?
I did. I just want to add to the conversation, to what Corey was saying. It is somewhat about trauma too. I think to add to that, I think what we need is to strengthen the Black family dynamic. Just the way we work together as a Black family, with proper planning and proper conversations that we should be having. And then I think we need to definitely increase our financial literacy across our culture. The reason I say that is to go back to the story that I led with in regards to my grandmother's house. We talk about gentrification here in Georgia. She lived in a community where in Georgia, the city of Decatur, where it has one of the top rated school systems in Georgia, beautiful home, huge corner lot, plantation style home. So you can imagine. She acquired that house back in the 40s or 50s. It used to be a boarding home. She offered it to other workers and laborers that would come into town. They had somewhere to stay and be. She sold moonshine there. It was somewhat of a little marketplace where you could come. I saw the neighborhood turn over at least 2 times in my lifetime. Right. So I saw gentrification happen. I saw us reclaim it. Gentrification happen again. I say all that to say sometimes it's not even that we don't value our community. We don't even know where to start. We haven't had the proper planning put in place or the proper conversations to hold on to what it is that we do value. So in 2018, when my grandmother passed away, remember I told you she acquired that house in the 40s or 50s. She paid about $40,000 or $50,000 for this house, maybe 60 at max. The house was paid off. What happened is pre-gentrification, because of education and what other cultures understood, they came in offering a reverse mortgage. During a time when my grandmother needed money, she was putting grandchildren through college. She was always the hand that was lending things and giving things out. She accepted the reverse mortgage is what happened. And so the terms of the reverse mortgage sound really good to an older lady who wanted to get some equity, needed some cash flow. And she agreed to the reverse mortgage, put her grandchildren through college, still had the home where people could come and stay. I know I had some tough times where I had to stay there at least twice when I was raising kids on my own. And so all of that was cool. Then the terms of the reverse mortgage were, even if you pass away, your next of kin gets to keep your property. So you're having your cash, your equity, and you guys still get to live there. Okay, cool. So when she passed away, you with the reverse mortgage, of course, you got to pay that money back. You pay that it's very low mortgage, but you have to pay it back. Then you can keep the property. Long story short, she passes away, and the next of kin, which was my grandmother, is in distraught. First of all, not paying the mortgage, not knowing what's happening or what's going on. The short version is, as a family, my great grandmother had 5 children. Only 2 really contributed to her caregiving, so they couldn't even agree on what to do with the property. Furthermore, they were grieving and nobody paid the mortgage. It got behind. The house now goes to the foreclosure block and we're getting ready to lose it. Well, my husband and I, we're just great grandchildren. So, we're not even, next of kin, or we're farther down the line. We discussed, well, we need to keep this, we need to pay this mortgage. How are we in foreclosure? This is the house she owned. And, it was so much family drama that it was just going to be a mess. It was going to be too messy to come up off of the property. Long story short, we sell. We sell just to pay off the mortgage, the equity, the house that she'd already paid for, she needed to pay back. We sold this home for about $300,000. The mortgage, that equity was about 200 and something $1,000. So there was a little bit of money to split between the heirs, the 5 heirs, and then the house sold. We sold it for $300,000. Remember, we bought it for $50,000, and the house sold for $1.3 million as is, with no renovations, to somebody that was not of our ethnicity. So when you talk about gentrification, it's not even that we love that home. We cared. We wanted to keep it in the family, but it came with so many obstacles and roadblocks that we had not had a conversation about, and we were ill prepared to handle moving forward. And so it's not always just that. That is a trauma. It's a trauma of a family dynamic where we don't work together. We don't have the hard conversations. We don't. And, now as an insurance agent and planner, my family hates to see me coming. Where's your packet? Where's your folder? Where are your assets? Who owns this? Do you understand how this works? I know you have a will, but do you understand how far that's going to take you? Who's in charge of your bank account? It's just conversations that need to be had. But if you are not educated and you are financially illiterate, you won't have them. And you can love the hood and the block and everything else as much as you want. But if you're not properly prepared or equipped with the knowledge that you need to have, gentrification will happen, and it will not include you.
So Angelique, I want to ask you something in regards to something that Jimmy said, actually. Jimmy was talking about supporting Black businesses. And I want to ask you, Angelique, because of conversations that we've had before, why do you think that we are so hard on our own Black businesses, right? So we'll see on social media, and people will say things like, I try to support Black businesses, but I try to give them a chance, but I can't do it. But when Amazon messed these people's order up, you don't hear people complaining about that, right? But if a small mom and pop shop that's just working out of their home to make ends meet makes a mistake or makes an error, we're so hard to come down and tell the whole world about it. Why do you think we are so hard on our own Black businesses, and what do we have to do to get out of that state of mind and to support more of our own businesses?
Yeah, good question. And we do talk about that. And I think it goes back to what Jimmy said, is that proximity to whiteness. So we think, the white man's ice is colder. And historically it was, because when they used to deliver the ice, they would get their ice first, and ours, they would deliver to the Black neighborhoods, the ice box, if you remember, that's why it was called that. And they would deliver to the Black neighborhoods, hours later, and so or days later, and it would melt faster. And so it was like their ice was colder. I'm giving you 3 points, like the Baptist pastor did on Be Out. So I want to go back to what Jimmy said about the highways. If you do some research, 147 in Durham was literally put in between Black neighborhoods to break up that wealth that was going on in Durham, North Carolina. So even roads and highways are based in systematic racism, right? Number 2, your man, Jay-Z, Jigga, in an interview that he gave, he talked about, and this is Corey mentioned this. He was talking about how someone that he knew bought a place over by Marcy, and they was all excited and they had paid all this money for it. And he was like, Jay-Z was like, you bought it by Marcy Projects? Like, for real? Oh, okay. But they didn't go by at night. They sold that house within their place within a couple of days because they didn't understand, to Corey's point, the trauma and everything that was happening in those neighborhoods. And number three, we have to educate on what Tiffany was saying on how to don't sell grandma's house, because if they're coming for it, that means that there's some value to it. So we have to educate ourselves on, like Tiffany's situation was, it was so unfortunate because there was a whole bunch of stuff going on and they weren't really able to save it. But if somebody is coming to you that especially don't look like us, or they send a proxy that does look like us to, because we know that we have those, to say, well, we'll give you this and we'll give you that. And that money, like Corey said, it looks real good. I'm gonna get 50 grand. I'm in the hole. I'm broke. But I promise you within 365 days, that 50 grand that they gave you, they are going to flip it and it's going to be 200 grand. And then it's going to go on. But I think why we don't give ourselves the benefit of the doubt and the grace that we give to the others is, again, goes back to your shirt, is that love. We don't love ourselves the way that we love what we think that they are offering us. And if we don't give ourselves that grace, that is why the Black dollar stays in the neighborhood, 6 hours maybe, because we don't really love ourselves and say, you know what, let's lift them up. Let's give them another chance. Let's go back and say, hey, this was my experience, and I'm just telling you what the experience was so that you can coach or learn from, and don't go in there, neck rolling, finger popping, all of that, but offering that love and grace of, this was what my experience was. And, I want to continue to use you. And so I would like to offer this feedback. So if we can give each other that, then we can start to really build our businesses and buy back the hood and have it where it's our hood again. So had an ecosystem where everything was Black back in the day. And I'm sorry to interrupt whoever was just talking.
No, that's fine. Go ahead.
Yeah, but everything was Black back in the day. The barber, the little grocery stores, the corner stores, everything in our neighborhoods, all of our insurance agents, etc. So it can be done. We know that it can be done. We just have to get back to that place where our pride is way bigger and stronger than what they have told us that we are worth.
Yeah, and I just want to piggyback on a couple things. What Angelique talked about in terms of, we've done this before, right? So we have done this before, so it's possible. Like, I was having a conversation last night with Corey about the amount of Asian barbershops I see popping up in our neighborhoods, and I'm like, we have people that really support an Asian barbershop. Out of all the Black businesses in the world, like, I thought a barbershop was sacred. But also I want to go back to something that Tiffany talked about when she talked about having those conversations, right? We got to be able to have the tough conversations. I'll give you a personal story. In my family, there's a piece of land that I should have inherited from my grandparents, but they thought they were doing the right thing. They had 7 kids and they left the land to 7 kids, right? And I don't know about your family. I can't get 7 people to agree on what the weather is or what color the wall is. So because of that, some family lives out of town now, and some family doesn't care. Some did care. Some, thought they owned the Taj Mahal. So make a long story short, that land was lost. And part of it is because my grandparents didn't have the information that, hey, you shouldn't leave land to 7 people. You just shouldn't. In my experience, that never works out, right? But it's about having those conversations. And I grew up in an environment where even talking about life insurance was taboo. No one wanted to talk about their death, right? It's like, you bring up life insurance, it's like, the same way you said, when they see you coming, they don't want to hear about it. They're like, look, don't even talk about that. We don't even want to talk about death. We don't want to talk about what happens, but those are important conversations that we have to have. When I did work as a life insurance agent, one of the things that I found interesting is how many people actually had insurance, but their family didn't know where the papers or documents were, right? And that's another conversation we have to have. If something happens to me, here's where you find my information, because an insurance company won't pay you unless you contact them first. So there's millions and millions of dollars that are due to some of our families and our people that are just sitting with insurance companies, right? But the family doesn't know that they have insurance. They don't know where the documents are. So I had a family member recently pass and had insurance. And when I called, I was having a conversation with the insurance company, and it was like, well, eventually, we would have contacted you years later or something, but there's a lot of money. So we have to have the conversations about not just having insurance, not just having these properties, right? So now I think we're doing a better job in this current climate of talking about wealth building. But now the second part is not just building this wealth. How do we take it from one generation to the next? That's where we have a lot of work to do in terms of having a will, having trust, having estates, and how to deal with them. And also, when we accumulate assets, letting the next generation know that they're actually there, right? How many times have someone passed and you found out that your uncle owned land in a whole other state that no one knew about, right? So we got to make sure that we make our families aware of where these things are. I just wanted to add that to the conversation.
Perfect. So I think that I will close with one question, and I'll have each of you answer. As we talk about legacy, thinking back to your younger self, what piece of advice would you have wanted someone to tell you, and how would you address it, or how would you address your younger self? Let's start with Angelique.
Thank you, Sam, for that question, and thank you for having me. I think one of the things that what I wish someone would have said to me, and it wasn't too many years ago, is don't get the credit card for the T-shirt. And what I mean by that is when I stepped on the campus, see, somebody gets that. Somebody caught that.
Yeah, I relate to that on a spiritual level.
Oh, somebody, oh man, I'm telling you, that hit me in my shana, like, oh Lord, honey, Lord. But as most of you probably know, when I stepped on the campus of the illustrious North Carolina Central University Eagle Prize, shout out to the Eagles, in front of the student union, they had those tables lined up where you could get you a T-shirt. All you had to do was fill out the credit card. And I didn't know, and because we didn't have those conversations at the dinner table like other folks did about credit and all of that. So I was like, oh yeah, cool. I want a T-shirt. I get the credit cards. My credit's messed up forever. I mean, it took me a long time to, get my credit back together. So I wish that, and I have done this with my daughter all throughout, is just understanding the power of credit and how you really can use credit and really, use it to your advantage. Cash is king. But if you don't have good credit, you are stuck. Higher interest rates. Sometimes they look at your credit now for jobs. They're looking at your job, your credit now for, get a home, etc. So I would say that I wish that, somebody told me don't get the T-shirt for the credit card for the T-shirt. I do want to do a quick shout out too before we do that. At the Chamber of Commerce on Monday, we are doing a capital empowerment panel with M&F Bank, Travis Rouse, with Dominique Cole Johnson from Pinnacle Financial Group, and Kevin Dick from the Carolina Small Business Development Fund, talking about access to capital and empowerment, which ties right into what we're talking about. It is free. You can go on the chamber website and register. And this is just going to give resources and tools about, access to capital and being attractive to organizations to get capital for your businesses. So that's what I would say. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here. That wraps it up for me. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you. Tiffany.
Okay. So advice, like what I would say right now is live for today and always plan for tomorrow. I think if we can make planning a priority as early as possible and understanding why, we'll be in such a great place for generations to come, right? So I get it. I've had plenty of conversations with prospects and clients that they don't see the value in planning for tomorrow as much as they should. But if I had anything from my personal experience that I would just want to give to every other individual, it would be, if you plan now, it will even it will help your mental health. When you lose a loved one, you're going to have a choice. You're either going to grieve or have to handle the business. And I had to handle the business, and I had no time to grieve. And everybody else was grieving, and they were unable to handle the business. So lucky for them, they had a me. But there are some people who won't have a me, and death is inevitable. And poor planning will dictate the type of grieving that you'll be able to do, and the way that you'll be able to move forward in this generation and every generation that comes behind whoever it is that you love. So plan when you can plan. Get life insurance as early as you can. Have hard conversations. Write things down. Let people know where things are and what they can do. Live for today, but plan for tomorrow. Plan for tomorrow. It's just really that simple. I mean, I have a host of things that I could say, that I've learned, but I feel like it's the deepest piece of advice I can give right now. So I appreciate the opportunity, and everybody live for today, because tomorrow is not promised, because in Atlanta it's like 110 degrees. We could just die if we walk outside. But plan for tomorrow.
It's actually a little cooler today, so that's nice. I don't know if you've gotten a chance to go outside yet. Just about
Not
10
yet.
degrees. Yeah, so it's only 100
Yeah.
degrees. So we'll go Corey, and then we'll go Jimmy.
Okay.
I was a wild youngin', so I had to approach myself carefully. Don't worry about they. Like, they is like like hypothetical. Can't worry about hypothetical people. You got to do what is right for you currently. Hypothetical people will have you, doing hypothetical things instead of the thing that you're supposed to do, the right thing for yourself. People stay worried about the wrong thing, and most of the time, the wrong thing they worried about is what's going on, what somebody else is doing, and instead of worrying about what they should be doing for themselves, for their family, and for their community. Don't worry about what they are doing. Worry about what you're supposed to do, and do the things that you have to do so that you can do the things that you want to do, right? Put yourself in a winning position at all times. A lot of the only emotion men, especially men in these urban environments, are allowed to show is anger, without being clowned. And I was one of those people, and I had to learn over time that that's not the only emotion. You know what I mean? Like, these young men and these young ladies, they need to see love, right? Anger is the only emotion you're allowed to show without any repercussions, right? And then when the anger gets out of control, people get hurt. Hurt people, and people die. We got to show each other more love, right? So I would tell younger me to don't worry about that. Just do what you got to do. So I'm gonna just stay right there.
All right. So what I'll say is this. I would say that relationships are an asset class, right? So a lot of times, as we talk about finance, we talk about various instruments. But my grandmother told me when I was young, she said, look, it doesn't cost you anything to be nice to people, and that pays the most dividends. And she's absolutely correct. And I will reinforce that to my younger self, because working in real estate, I've gotten better and more opportunities just from the relationships that I've built across the years, whether that's through high school, college, and just being nice and treating people well. It will put you in a position to succeed in life. So my advice would be that relationships are an asset class. So invest in those as well, value them, and treat people well, because that will help you succeed more so than anything else as you go through your journey.
Perfect. Well, thank you all so much. This has been an amazing conversation, and we've been able to get so many gems that we can take, hopefully, beyond today and onto our future generations. So that is our first annual. I guess I wasn't supposed to say that, right? Our inaugural. Excuse me, Sam. I know Sam was like, "What are you saying?"
Can I say one last thing before we get out of here?
Absolutely.
For anyone watching, our By the Hood camp is at bythehoodcamp.com. It's right where my name is. I don't know, my name's not up there, but it's bythehoodcamp.com. It's completely free. It's for the people that look like us. It's for the youth, ages 5 and up. Starts next week, but you can register right there at bythehoodcamp.com. And again, I just want to put it out there. It's FREE. But some of the work that we're most proud of, because we get to it's not about the kids actually just picking everything up right away, but exposing them to concepts and ideas. So as they grow, they'll have exposure to certain things to help them grow financially. So I just want to put it out there. It's bythehoodcamp.com, completely free. And I want to thank you guys again for inviting us to be a part of this amazing panel. You guys have been amazing, and I want to say thank you. This is awesome.
Yeah, thank you. And really quick, since you're already talking, Jimmy, could you just share social media handles for By the Hood?
Yeah, so By the Hood, we're at By the Hood on pretty much every platform: Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook, right here. So we're just at BUYTHEHOOD. And you can find us pretty much everywhere online, and you can go right to bythehood.com as our main website to get information about Corey and I and what our mission is and some of the work that we do. We also have a podcast, which is the By the Hood podcast, where we talk to people that look like us. We talk to Black folks who are doing positive work. I want to get some of you guys to come on the podcast. Dion's actually already been on our podcast, but we talk to people doing positive work, and we like to highlight them and get them to tell their stories, because Corey and I do a lot of work in various environments, and one of the things that we hear from the youth a lot of times is, man, I didn't know that people look like me were doing X or doing Y. So we like to represent that. We have engineers, we have doctors, we have business owners, we have people that run the Chamber of Commerce. We have people that are doing amazing work. And I think it's important to highlight that. And that's why I think this panel was great, to show that, we are amazing people doing amazing things out in this world.
Absolutely. Angelique, since you're still with us, where can people go to follow you, connect with you, be in your presence?
Oh, Doc, you're one of my faves. I adore you. I adore
love you right back.
So thank you. So let's see. My social media is just my name, Angelique Stallings, like Oprah, Angelique Stallings now. But you can follow me on Instagram is I am Angelique Stallings. On Facebook is Angelique Stallings. LinkedIn, Angelique Stallings. I also would invite you to follow the work that we're doing at the Greater Durham Chamber of Commerce, and that is the handle under all platforms. You will see, because I am the only person of color, and I'm going to be even more specific, I'm the only Black woman that works there and in leadership. You will see a lot of Black faces. A lot of the work that we're doing, particularly around small businesses, our panelists and things like that, are Black men and women, because I'm being very intentional. I was very specific when I took this job that was going to be my focus. So I again say thank you so much for inviting me to be here today. Thank you, Dion, for this opportunity. And Corey, I just want to give a shout out to Philly's own Rasheed Wallace, who's having a street named after him either this weekend or next weekend, baby. So shout out to the good brother Rasheed Wallace.
Absolutely.
Big ups to him.
Shout out to Sheed.
Yep, for sure.
Perfect. Well, it looks like Tiffany had to jump. So again, thank you all for being here. We are Black People Parenting, our inaugural Juneteenth Summit. Happy Juneteenth to all of you all. Happy Father's Day to the fathers out there. And just because you may not have biological children does not mean that you're not out here parenting to our youth. So thank you all for being here. We appreciate you so much. And we hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend.
And if I can interject one moment and just say that this is my birthday weekend, and this panel, this summit has been the best birthday gift that I could ask for. So thank y'all, everybody, for joining us, and we appreciate y'all.
Happy birthday, good brother.
Happy birthday, Dion. Happy Father's Day, brothers. Happy Father's Day.
Absolutely. Appreciate you guys. This has been amazing.
Right.
Happy birthday and happy Father's Day. And thank you.
And happy Juneteenth.
Yes.
For sure.